Hi, I'm Carolyn Gage, and I am a playwright. And today I'm going to be talking with my friend Tavia Gilbert, who is someone that I knew from 20 years back in the theater community. And she went to New York, and I stayed in Maine, and her career took a different direction, and she's just a superstar. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we're going to talk about her photography, which is what I wanted to do the podcast on. So, Tavia, take it away and tell us what you did after you left Portland.
Sure. It's really, really good to see you. It's been a long time. And I appreciate the invitation to be on your podcast and to talk about all sorts of things. Yeah, we met, I can't remember. I moved to Maine in 2020. Uh, 2002 I moved to Maine, or 2001, I can't remember exactly, but and we became acquainted pretty quickly after I moved there because I was in the theater scene in Portland. I was a trained actor, and had come from Seattle, and um as- my photography and my career in performance are linked in a
Mm,
funny way. And I'll try to make it coherent, but I moved to Maine, and thought I would live in Maine forever. Fell in love, got married, really had roots, had my most precious community of my life in Maine, and was doing theater and some on camera work as much as I could and had a day job. But my aspiration was always to make my living as a full time creative. I didn't want to have a day job and do my creative work on the side. I wanted to be employed by my own talent. And so I started to pursue voice acting while I was in Maine because I knew there was never going to be enough theater or on camera work to sustain a career. I didn't see a way to do that from Maine.
yeah.
So I started to look into voice acting. I loved my voice training as an undergraduate student at Seattle's Cornish College of the Arts, and fell in love with audiobooks while I was driving home from Seattle to southern Idaho on a break. I got my first audiobook cassette tape, put
Oh,
it in my Dodge Neon, and
cassette
Davina
tapes.
Porter. Yes, recorded books, cassette tapes. Davina Porter was the first narrator I ever heard, and she was narrating an Joanna Trollope book.
Mhm.
And I started weeping in my car and thought, I want to do that. I love that. I want to do that work. So years later, I had been living in Maine for some time, and I had another surgery. I was born with deformed feet and started having surgery, corrective foot surgeries, when I was about 7 months old, and had surgery all throughout my childhood and adolescence and into my adulthood. And then I was 29 years old and had this major surgery. And so I had months where I was on disability, out of work, and healing. So while I was recovering from that and thinking, how am I going to manage this complicated body and be a full time creative? I voraciously studied and read and consumed every bit of information I could about the audiobook industry because I
Mhm.
recognized it was a performance medium. It was really refined technical craft, and it was entrepreneurial. And
Mhm.
just at that time, the industry was shifting. So prior to about 2008, 6, 7, 8, people had to record in recording studios in major metropolitan areas: LA, Chicago, New York,
Mhm.
a little bit in Washington, D.C. People were doing audiobooks in studios with directors, with engineers. And in this time period when I had my surgery, it was shifting so people could record audiobooks in their home studios.
Mm.
So I was just relentless and determined that audiobooks were going to be my career. And um, they became the way I made a living. And so I've been in audio for really 17 years full time, I believe. And the
Yes, but you're
reason,
not just in audio. You are racking up, looks like national and maybe even international awards. Why don't you tell us about some of the benchmarks in the audiobook career that you've hit? Because they're really,
yeah, thank you. Um, One of the things that I'm really proud of was winning, not just being nominated. I had this ambition that I wanted to be nominated for Best Female Narrator from the Audio Awards, which are like for our
Well,
industry.
obviously.
Right, right. They're sort of the Oscars of audiobooks. And so I had this ambition of one day I just want to be nominated for that award. And in 2017, I was nominated and I won. And I was shocked to win. Um, I was competing with amazing narrators that were like real life human beings that I know and love, my colleagues, and then also Emma Thompson and I think Juliet
Oh my,
Stevenson and
oh my God, Juliet Stevenson.
yeah. So right, right. So when I was nominated, I was blown away to be nominated. And I was at the award ceremony in Chicago, and Paula Poundstone was our MC, and they announced this category. And she called my name, and my heart just fell because my mind said they're calling the names of the runners up until they call the actual winner's name. And so I just sat there sort of a little like crushed, and Brian, my partner, elbowed me and he said, "You won, get up there, get up there." So it was shocking to win that, and I'm so so proud of that because it was a book that I recorded in my home studio right behind me then in Brooklyn, but I self-directed it, I self-engineered it, and I won that award, which means the world to me. Um,
Well,
I'm also
I'm assuming it came with additional work, higher ability to command higher pay, et cetera, et cetera.
less than you might imagine. I mean, I think it really established me and made sure that people recognized that I was firmly, a presence and a name. And I don't think my rates shot up. I've certainly been, I feel incredibly blessed because I have never not had audiobook when I've wanted and needed work. There has been maybe 1 week, maybe 2 weeks where I thought, oh, I could really use a gig right now, and I haven't had it. And that is kind of unheard of that I would have a sustained, abundant career with pension and health insurance and the benefits of being a union actor and making a living wage and being able to provide for myself and my life and have a good quality life and not be a starving artist. Audiobooks has done that for me. And then podcasts 7 years ago, my work became about half in directing, narrating, and producing audiobooks, and half writing, hosting, producing podcasts. So I'm just as passionate about that area of my audio career because it's writing, it's storytelling, it's relationships with people. It's another part of the world of my work. So I feel really, really blessed by that. And I've been able to buy a home. That's a huge accomplishment in
I'm counting
America.
commercial success, and of course, I'm a playwright. I just get it. When a woman gets to the place that you are, I know the iceberg under that tip. I know what you put in, and that's a
Yeah.
competitive field. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is something she really wants. This
Yeah,
is
I
something
do.
she is really going for. And I would sort of watch it from afar and really sometimes a little envious, but mostly just awe, like, oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah, I think that's
I
really,
miss theater though. I mean, I've worked on plays of yours and I think you're a brilliant playwright and I am equally as admiring of your tenacity, your success, your genius, your determination, hustle, drive, entrepreneurship. I mean, it's incredible what you've accomplished. And in theater, which I think if I didn't have to be a late night person and um, on the road, theater would have been my absolute dream ambition. It's just a harder lifestyle than I was willing to commit to.
well, and you have to have a day job. What I did was I toured, and as we were talking, I'm disabled, and touring for, I think I toured for 22 years was hard. It was
Yeah.
really, basically, I just did a pile of caffeine and I'd come home and go to bed for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I'd go out for another 3 or 4 day gig that was going to pay 6 months rent and come home and collapse. It was
Yeah.
very, very hard. And
Demanding.
I was aware I am incredibly fortunate. I'm too sick for a 40-hour week. I can do this.
Yeah.
This is actually something I can do because of, the level of disability I had. But it's just Well, we both found our way, but
Yeah.
we're here to talk about something that's not the day job, the photography.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
can you do the slideshow and start talking about the work?
Yeah, I'll tell you actually
Oh,
first
that's
the
right. Yeah.
tie.
Hmm.
So when I was recovering from that surgery, that was my development of my audiobook life. Several years later, after all of these surgeries, all of this dysfunction and spinal problems from my gait being off, from my feet being so dysfunctional, I had um, suddenly, without warning, a really catastrophic injury of herniated discs and
Ah,
um, a rotator cuff injury that just kind of exploded one morning out of the blue. And suddenly I was really disabled and pretty much bedridden for maybe a 9 month or 12-month period. And I couldn't record books. I was it was really devastating. What I could do was go downstairs to my garden and take pictures. Um, and that was something that I did that became very, very healing for me because the world got so tiny as I was trying
mhm.
to recover and trying to generate the courage to really work at recovery, to not be passive and hope that I might someday be better, but really try to take care of myself and get stronger and heal. So in that little bit of the world that was still available, it was like my back garden. And I took pictures of snails and cherry blossoms, and I fell in love with it. I'd always loved photography from childhood, but I'd never done it. I'd never trained in it formally. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it became such a part of finding peace, joy, beauty, healing. And so now, all these years later, it's still something that really means a lot to me. And I'm kind of adopting or allowing myself to think of myself as also a photographic artist. Um, that's been harder to embrace because it's just sort of a natural part of my development. I haven't set out with ambition exactly to do it, but it's a really integrated part of my heart and soul. And my dog agrees with me, so she's vocalizing
Oh,
so that I have
I
all of
think
her
this
support.
ambient sound is just incredible. I was the first time I saw your photography and it was flowers. It really was arresting because it was almost like the old master's art. There was something almost Rembrandtian or something about it. Was like it didn't look like photography. It was like, oh my God. And also I felt like there was a depth to it. And we'll look at the one that was really arresting, ancestors. But I felt like it was just you're looking at something in nature, but it's almost, like it looks completely different. I can't really even find words to describe it. I'm sure somebody who is a photography critic or something, but it was just to me a very high order of art. And I still feel that
Thank
way.
you.
And I don't know why it didn't occur to me sooner, but let's share some of this. And I'd love to hear your thinking and your process on the individual paintings. See, listen to me, photographs that you have.
I'll
So
share my screen. Um, this is the one that I think you love the most.
it is indeed.
And it's funny that you say paintings because I called this one. I don't have the names for all of the pictures. Sometimes I name them. More often than not, I do now. But when I started, I didn't name them. But this one I named Ancestors because my beloved maternal grandfather was a beautiful oil painter. He painted the picture behind me, and I grew up with him painting um, oils. And when I saw this picture, it made me think of my grandfather and all that he taught me. He taught me perspective and sketching and
I mean, this
painting.
to me is incredibly painterly, and the veins and the petals have are textured like a blob of paint on the canvas. And I particularly loved it because the center part to me is reminiscent of the human brain, the cranium.
Mm-hmm.
It just there's I can get lost in this picture. It's waves, like an ocean. It's also a cavern. It's
Mm.
and so what is it actually? What
It's
flower was
just a
it?
tulip.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing that I take is um designed or staged. I don't
Mhm.
know that I've ever done a still life. Although I'm certainly open to it, and there's so much more that I want to do with my photography, so much more that I want to learn and explore. But everything that I take is just stuff that I see in the world around me, and I don't spend a lot of time doing it. Um, I kind of, and it's almost every single thing that I've taken so far is just on my iPhone. So I'll use an editing app and play around most of the time, um, make some edits to it, but it's just kind of quick, like almost urban photography because I can't remember exactly where this one was. Some of the pictures I know exactly where I was, but it's mostly stuff that I just see at the bodega in the flower arrangements that you can buy for 12 bucks, or it's growing wild on the street, or it might be in a garden but it might not be. It's just stuff that I see and I quickly capture it. And um yeah, this one means a lot to me too. I really love this picture, and I think my grandfather would be really, really proud of this.
It looks to me a little bit like a flower that one would say has turned the corner and is speaking. And I like that because I'm 73 now, but I really like that. I think irises and tulips and also
Mm,
roses, as they age, they really get spectacular and very unique. They all
hmm.
look kind of similar in full bloom, but as they decay, they start to that I don't know if this one is, but I think this tulip is on the way out
Mm,
as something you buy at a store. But to me,
hmm.
it's just fascinating.
This
Yeah.
next one, I think, let's see, that one is on its way out, and I love this picture. This is one of my favorites, and it's old, but I love that there were spots and wilting and death and full bloom, and that it's all
Mm.
together.
I love your color palette. Do you use filters or Photoshop or what do you do with these?
There's an app on on my iPhone called Snapseed, and there's never a filter that I like. I'm just going through different processes and playing around with it and seeing what works. And that's also very fast. I don't spend a lot of time doing
Yeah.
any posts. It might take me I might spend 2 minutes playing around with different stuff and then putting it out in the world. And but I just think my grandfather has had a huge influence on my sense of color and composition. And then my mother, um, it has been a stained glass artist, and she's a musician, and she's a very artistic, design oriented person. So I think it's generational um, that it's not labor for me. I don't have to work hard at it, and I really feel grateful for that because it happens so fast. I shoot fast and I edit fast, and then that's it. And some
Well,
things
and
come
I
out that
think
I
you
think are.
almost have to do that because you have a meticulous day job, like the
Mhm.
audiobooks. I imagine there's a huge amount of, just not just the vocal technique and the control, but also all the technology. And so you
Yeah.
don't want to have to load that for the thing you're doing on the side.
Yeah.
I think that that's a beautiful thing that you can get such beautiful results with something that is not that taxing you at the same degree that the
Yeah. Yeah.
is.
But I think, when AI really hit the conversation of audio in the first week of January 2023, there
Yeah,
was, it just suddenly, AI was something that had been on my radar for years and years.
yeah.
Um, because I do a technology podcast and a security podcast. So I'd known about it coming for ages. And then all of a sudden it just burst into the mainstream, and everybody in audiobooks was for a week in a panic. Our careers are over, our work is gone. How are we going to pay our mortgage? Where are we going to get health
Mhm.
care? And I thought, if I need to pivot and find a new career path,
Mm.
um, it will be photography. I will get really, really committed to my photography. And I'm glad that audio is sustaining, and I think it will sustain for some time to come. But when I think about the business that I want to build, that can be doing great productions, telling great stories, I want to be deeply involved in it, but I want it to free up time because I want to do more work as a photographer. So that's kind of my long-term ambition, is to be, I'd love to be as solid in the photography world as I am in the audio world. So we'll see. It's possible.
How is that doing, the AI and audiobooks?
I try not to pay too much attention to it because it can be so depressing, and it anything that makes me scared, I think, is too addictive and too dangerous for me to get connected to. So I don't pay too much attention. I think there's going to be a removal of the sort of lowest level of audiobooks, things that are not
Yeah.
beautifully crafted, things that don't have tremendous soul. Those are so easily replaceable by AI voices, because if you don't have soul, it's easy to perform a book that has no soul. And there are books that are out in the market that have no soul.
Oh, I feel the same way about playwriting. And I feel like all the years of writing about putting survivors of abuse front and center, also lesbians and especially lesbian butches, I'm like, well, there's nothing they can program AI with because the level of censorship of my themes is overwhelming and has not moved at all in 40 years. So I feel like in terms of authentic, certain kinds of authenticity of women on taboo subjects,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing to program them with.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, somebody asked AI to write a Carolyn Gage play, and I was amazed at how competent it was.
yeah,
They
yeah.
knew I fight, so it was a fight, um, and it was a fight over AI, I think, which was witty.
Meta.
I was kind of stunned. It was like, this
Yeah,
is actually relatively sophisticated, and somehow they did get my number a little bit.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
weird.
yeah. I feel fairly confident. I think the podcast world is a lot harder to take work away. Storytelling is harder to strip away. I think there will be things that are lost with AI voices. I don't think that will be replaced. I think that great storytellers are great storytellers, and that's our oldest form of communication, and connection as human beings. So I feel, as long as I am a deeply emotional, vulnerable, engaging storyteller, I'll still have work. Where's some wood so I can knock on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll share another picture with you, though. This is something that I really love. A lot
Mm.
of my work is macro, and what I love about this, it's not the most brilliant picture ever taken, but what I love about it is that it was a smashed flower on the sidewalk that
Ah,
was just this mangled, bedraggled, like wisp of a flower afterthought. And I was walking down the street on my way to the subway and saw this flower, and laid down on the sidewalk and got close to it and put my phone on the sidewalk to take this picture. And I love this picture because this flower is so beautiful, and it has flowers within flowers.
and
It has
when
its
I
own
looked
little
at it,
garden.
I felt like it was resonating with a little bit of a stars and stripes theme.
Mm,
Of maybe it made me think for a second of the flag and all of the things it represents and
mm,
misrepresents.
hmm,
And it was almost like a pure distillation of the dreams of a free country, of
mm.
something beautiful. Because the stars on against the white there. It was just like, oh
Oh, I
wow.
love that.
I don't know. I just that was what I was thinking, is just like very far removed references to the red,
That's
white,
a
blue.
fantastic interpretation. And I see it. And
And what's lovely is
yeah.
as the red comes out, it's as if it's lit
Mm-hmm.
because of the gold. It has
Yeah.
fire or fireworks type of energy. That's a really spectacular photograph.
I really love it. It was like that was about as much as remained intact. So it's trash. This picture is trash. And I think it's, it to me is inviting attention being paid to things that we are expected to just discard and ignore. And if we will stop ignoring and discarding and assuming, if I'd walked by that and hadn't noticed it or thought, oh, I wish I could take it, but it's too mangled, then I would have missed something really beautiful and whimsical and fun to look at. So I try to, I'm not trying to pack big messages into my photos. I feel like what I do when I take a picture and then edit a picture is release what it inherently already is or wanted to be, and I'm just offering a little bit of a vehicle for it. Um,
Oh my gosh,
that
that's an incredibly beautiful approach to art. It's also
Thank
very
you.
humble. It's yeah, it's sort of like I'm just the lens.
Yeah, I really do feel that way. I can show you some others.
What's this one up here? That it looks like it's a bunch of flowers almost in a circle. They're forming a circle against a white background. That,
This
yeah.
one.
What is that?
This one is something that I really really love, but I want to be careful, and so I've that's why I added it to this conversation because this was taken at the Musée d'Orsay. It's a Monet painting, and it's just one little section of a much larger canvas. But I saw it and I zoomed in and I wanted that close up, and then I made it different. And I have questions about, is that ethical to take another artist's work and interpret their work in my own way? Is it fair? Is it, I don't have an answer. I love this picture because it's so textured, it's so multicolored, it's so shadowed, and it looks
I thought it was
slightly like the
embroidery. I thought
original.
it was embroidery when I saw it. It looked like
Yeah, it does look
very
like that.
old-fashioned handkerchief or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to, I'm tempted to do a series of these and do, many more of them, but I also have thought about this picture for years. Like, is it my right to
I
do
think,
that?
I mean, the thing is, it doesn't expire for visual artists like it does writers. The copyright is owned by the museum,
Mm,
usually. And you would need permission, and I doubt they would let you
yeah,
monetize in any
yeah,
way, any kind of well, anything without money, but
yeah,
especially not altering it.
yeah,
Unless if it was like a theater, well, if you could pass it off as parody, you can get away with it, but
yeah, yeah.
clearly not a parody. But
I
yeah.
haven't sold much of my work, and I think I would never try to monetize this one, but I do like the idea of making, and it's also nice because I'm not relying on Juniper Street Photography, which is the name and the website. I'm not relying on that for money. I would love to make some and more money from it than I have in the past. Um, but I also just like the idea that I'm free to just make work that's for my own benefit, my own pleasure, and to put it out in the world just for other people's pleasure. So I do want to, I have this dream and this ambition of my pictures hanging in places of healing, children's hospitals where I've spent a lot of my time, in yoga centers, in addiction recovery places, anywhere where somebody is healing and recovering from something. I really want my photos to find a market there because for me, they come from a place of healing. They helped me heal. And my mission with Juniper Street is to offer moments of peace, goodwill, and joy through beauty. I think beauty is really healing, and people have said that they feel something specific with my photos, that they can feel them and they are calming, they slow them down, they make them take a breath. And I love that. That's what they do for me. So I love that it translates to the receiver, and I hope that someday my photos will hang in places where
I think
people
that
need
intention,
help.
I mean, I just saw you start posting these and they were immediately arresting. And I felt like that was what I got from them was
Oh, I'm
like,
so
oh,
glad.
these are these are an experience. These are not a graphic. These are an experience. And it's
Yeah,
just,
that means the world to me. Let's see. Let's see. This is one similar to the street, the flower on the street. This was in Seattle on some stairs.
that's
And
interesting. The background, is that just cement?
yeah, it's just granite
Mm.
stairs. But this one little leaf was hanging out apart. And I thought, how brave and how bold of her to just be on her own path and her own journey and not to worry about being a part of groupthink or.
And brighter and
Hmm.
others also.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, these were fun. These were outside my apartment and these were just in a window box. And I don't think that they were planted. I think they're chives, but they were wild.
Hmm.
And I love the pink. I love the brightness of them and that they're just weeds again, like something you're not supposed to necessarily look at as flat floral.
Yeah.
um, but absolutely are and are deserving of attention and focus. So I really love this one. That's one of my favorite colors. Um, I do a fair amount of architecture photography, and especially in New York, it encourages me to look up because we're
Yeah.
always looking down at our phones or we're looking for where we're trying to navigate to. And this city has the most magnificent architecture and surprises everywhere. And so
This
this
one is
one,
very weird. Like it's sort of this ledge, but nobody else gets
mhm,
a ledge. I'm like,
yeah.
is that the boss's office? And he's like, build me a, that's unusual. I mean, I'm like, well, it's obviously intentional, but it's kind of weird.
Yeah. I
There's a
think I
lot
called
of,
this one tennis bracelet too because I thought it was such a beautiful jeweled um some jeweled fancy lady wearing her tennis bracelets. Um this is a picture that this is what I used to see out my Brooklyn bedroom window. And I would see it if I would crane, stand up on the window sill, open the window, lean out and like crane my neck. It wasn't
this is like when you get someplace in Maine that says water views and you have to do that and squint and it has to be winter when the leaves are gone. It's like,
right,
oh, I can see the
right,
ocean, you know?
right. But I
Yeah.
took this picture over and over and over again because I loved when I only lived in one apartment in Brooklyn before we moved to Nyack, and having that view available, even if you had to work for it a little bit, this city is the city of dreams and hopes, and it's so epic and it's so beautiful. And so moving here was really, really painful and hard. I knew it was I knew if I wanted my career to grow, I had to leave Maine. There was I had
Yeah.
gone as far as I possibly could from Maine,
Hmm.
and I knew that leaving Maine was I'm almost to cry, that it was one of the biggest sacrifices I was ever going to make in my life. I've never felt as at home, as loved, as liked, embraced, as much a part of a community as I've ever felt in Maine. And I miss it. And I feel like the 12 years I spent as a resident of Portland they were tough. I went through some pretty tough times, but I really got to know what community was.
It's a sweet
And
little town. And I lived a lot of places, but when I got to Maine, I remember feeling not scared.
yeah,
It was the big city in Maine, and I'm like, I could be alone on the streets at midnight, and I just didn't get that hit, that you get in Boston or New York or anything, and I
yeah,
loved it. It's really
yeah.
small. Felt small townish. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. And I know it's changed a lot and I haven't been there in some years, but
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for it. And this view was just comforting to me to think, all right, I am on a mission. I'm trying to build a career and have some adventures and play in a bigger playground than ever before. And this to me is like this is New York City. It
Yeah.
was comforting, it was helpful. Um This is a fun one. This is the
Ooh.
ceiling in the Film Center building, which is 44th and Ninth in Midtown, Hell's Kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started training in voiceover, I used to take the Concord coach lines um, to the city and come in for like a weekend, take voiceover lessons in this building, and then go back to Maine on the bus. And I never looked up. I never noticed this. And then when I became a voice actor and an audiobook narrator, many of the audiobook recording studios are in this building. And my partner, Brian's company, Blackstone Publishing, has their New York offices in this building. So this building
Yeah,
has
it's
been in
really
my
wild.
life.
It looks like the interior of a ship, but it also
Yeah,
looks like being underneath a ship. It's very, to me, it seems to have kind of nautical
yeah. And
ambiance.
sci-fi. It's like a science
Yeah,
fiction.
yes, Metropolis or something,
Yeah, yeah,
1930s. Yeah, kind
yeah. So
of.
I really love this one. Again, looking up, and this is the Musée d'Orsay,
Mm,
looking up.
beautiful.
Yeah. Um, it's fun to see a picture because I often will see something and know, like, I can take that picture and I can uncover, I can see what is probably there. And this was one of those where it does and doesn't look like this. Um, but I'm never saying like I want more blue to be there or I want to add some green. I'm just saying like come out, what can I pull out of it? What can I bring to the surface so that it becomes what it dreams of being? And that was this shot too, that I could see hints of blues and greens that were much more vibrant than in the moment. And then when I made this picture, I thought, I knew it. I knew that was there.
Like the little slice, the little sliver of
Mhm.
lavender, kind of
Mhm.
center.
Yeah. And
Uh,
this one is one like that. This is on a hill overlooking Nyack, the Tappan Zee Bridge or the Mario Cuomo Bridge, and then Tarrytown across the water. And so this is the village where we live now.
mhm.
And we went to the tallest point that's closest to us, and the sky was, I knew, was this pink and this wild. And so I love this. This home feels as close to Portland as any home I've ever lived. So when we first drove here to see our house that we wanted to buy and that we did buy, I cried because it felt very much like I was coming way closer to home than I had been in
It
a long
really does,
time.
especially, and I remember the Tappan Zee Bridge from my childhood, but it looks, it does have a little bit of a Maine, New Hampshire feel too.
Yeah, it does. And people, we moved into one of 9 row houses that were built in the 1880s by shipbuilders for the shipbuilding families that worked at Van Houten shipyard a quarter of a mile down the hill on the water. And we loved having this historic home, but we also moved into this tight-knit little one-way street block called School Street, and in this row of houses where we're not in detached separate homes, we share a structure with 8 other owners, and that felt so sweet to move into a community where
Yeah.
people take care of each other, watch out for each other. We have, some block parties and ring in New Year's together, and there's a lot of sweetness here. So, and then there's a lot of natural beauty here for me to shoot and experience. So, I'm really lucky to be in a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Um, this is
Yeah. I want to see that one. What is that?
these were on a stump outside my house where we park our cars.
Hmm.
And I think they're um
Oh, turkey tails,
yes, exactly. Thank you.
but they're
That's exactly
green.
what they
Did
are.
you color
Yeah.
them green? Were they that color?
They wanted to be green.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have to
I
really
mean,
to see the turkey tail, but it's like, yeah, I thought, oh, they're snails or they're some
yeah.
kind of marine something or other. Wow.
Yeah. So this is so fun. I mean, it's just right in front of my car, and I feel like people all the time say, "Where do you shoot? Like, where do you find all this stuff?" And it's just around. Just look for it. You will see it everywhere. There's one I didn't put in this collection, but there's one that was outside my apartment in Brooklyn, and a red wall and then a crack in the sidewalk and a green weed growing out of that crack, and it's an amazing picture, not because it's an amazing picture, but because that little green shoot from the crack in the sidewalk is as beautiful as anything you will see in any sculpted garden, because it's life, it's growth, it's tenacity, it's bravery, it's courage, it's self-sustenance, all of that stuff. So you don't have to look hard for anything. It's everywhere around you. And one of the favorite things that happens is that when I take pictures and share them with people, I often get them tagging me in posts that they put up of things that they see and that they're
Oh,
noticing
yeah,
and shooting. And I
yeah,
love that, because how that's the kind of influencer I want to be, is find more beauty, find more joy, peace, goodwill, find the spaciousness in the breath. You can do it too. It's everywhere around you. You don't have to go away from home to find something
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. I get jaded because I'm up here on Mount Desert Island and people come from all over the world to photograph the scenery and the nature here.
Mm.
And I think I've gotten kind of jaded because I
Mm.
mean
You have
their
so
world.
much.
I never take my own pictures. I do a hike and then I go home and Google it and I find the best photo and put that up and say, this is where I was today.
Yeah.
But I think what I like is you're kind of combining, you're taking huge liberties with the color and maybe even texture. I think it's almost like another art form.
Mm.
What
Thank
is this,
you.
the Misty Lake one?
Oh, this one, this I was
Beautiful.
in um a retreat. I was pretty unhappy, uncomfortable, and just took a little walk and found this and
Mm.
thought, okay, I can do this. I can get through this.
Wow. Yeah, retreat that's uncomfortable. Those are always
Yeah,
interesting. Okay.
it wasn't successful, but this picture was.
That's no small thing.
And then this one is the last I'll share. This was I also really love when I have a chance to travel somewhere and go somewhere I might never return to. This was in
Mhm.
Chicago. I can't remember the name of the house, but it's downtown and it's an old, preserved, beautiful mansion that's full of art. And this was in an atrium,
Mhm.
obviously a whole circular, half circle. But my mother's a stained glass artist, so I took this for
Oh,
her.
really?
And
Wow.
yeah,
Mm. Yeah, it looks like some serious stained glass artistry going on there.
yeah, yeah. So I just like to find, like you said, texture, color, angle, surprise, um, humor sometimes. But I feel really grateful to photography, because I think I get overly serious and I'm overly focused and really um,
Yeah.
intense, which none of those are bad things, but it can be difficult if you can't find relief from that or find a step away from it. And photography really makes me laugh and smile and feel lighthearted and easy and playful and joyful. And so it takes me to a child place that I don't think anything else in my life quite does. So it's really added a lot, and I feel grateful to have some talent that I think just came from my ancestors.
Yeah. The world is really full of wonders. And I found when I got disabled that my world got so constricted. I was extremely disabled. But I just began to think of like a Zen garden where it's, the little rocks and then the big rocks, and it looks like islands in an ocean when it's actually 5 feet by 5 feet.
Mhm.
And I realized, you can get scale sitting in a Japanese rock garden. You can see the cliffs and the mountains and the distance. And I thought, I can do that. I'm going to my world is unbelievably constricted here, but I'm just going to have to recalibrate the way I look at it. And, I could walk this particular walk every day. That was the
Mm,
outer circumference of my life for 4 years.
yeah.
And oh my God, I saw bobcats and horses and a horse that gave birth to twins. And,
Oh,
it was like the same little walk every day, and it was universes. And I realized I could write like a newspaper every day about the goings on and the changes because I just recalibrated what I was looking at. And it
mhm,
was as intricate and absorbing and as epic as a Japanese rock garden.
mm.
I learned a lot of things. Disability was a great teacher, but
It is.
your ability to make magic with your camera like that, it's just a reminder. It's all how you look at it. The flower on the sidewalk, and I'm seeing my rapidly dying and dismissed hopes for this country in it. And, just,
Mhm.
just all of those things that are going on.
Yeah.
Uh, but I know you have to go. Is there anything you'd like to close with here?
No, but no, just thanks because
Oh, you have no Juniper. Tell us your
oh,
website,
Juniper
how to
Street
get these.
Photography. It's being revamped, so we're in the process of building a new site, and I do want to monetize it. I do want to make money from my art. So I sell calendars annually. I'm starting to sell prints. Juniper Street Photography. So there is a site now, and then we'll launch the
Well,
new site
people just Google Juniper Street Photography, and that
dot
will
com.
get
Yeah,
us to,
yeah.
yeah, .com, and that will get us to where you're selling prints and you're selling note cards and calendars.
Yeah, yeah. And then I hope to have a section that really does feature these photos are meant to be in healing spaces. So if there's interest in that, I would love to talk with people. And I just thank you because your encouragement and support are really meaningful. And what started out as just an expression for myself and pleasure for myself, it's people saying these are special and we want more and we'd like to buy your work and we want to support your work as a visual artist. It really makes a huge difference. If I didn't have that, I would just, it might be something that kind of drifts
I
away in my
wanted to just
busyness.
pass on a tip because I have been at your website early in my career. Someone said, what you're doing is so radical, you need to help people access it.
Hmm.
And I began to write introductions to all my plays. And I'm
Hmm.
like, Chekhov and Shakespeare never did this. And it's like, well, Bernard Shaw had them longer than the play itself. So I began to think, yeah, all right, it's not totally, bush league to do that. And
Yeah,
it made a huge difference. And I think if you just talked a little bit about your process or where you
yeah,
were, like that this is a flower that was dying on the sidewalk, or it doesn't have to be long, but just
yeah,
I think I found it helpful because the paradigms and the archetypes of lesbian culture are deeply censored. People don't know what they're seeing when they're in that world. And I
yeah,
write lesbian centered space. So if you can't get in that space, I get so much feedback, you wrote it wrong.
mm,
It doesn't make the narrative arc here is it's like you're not seeing it because our narrative
yeah,
arcs are different. But I feel like, your photography is so unusual that you might consider just a little bit of what you were hoping for your process, like you did here, to help
yeah.
people access it. But I feel like your emphasis on the healing, I felt it immediately and I didn't really know how to articulate it. But like I say, I just felt like it was high art and
That's so
really
kind. Thank you.
significant. Seriously.
Thank you.
Um, yeah. Well,
It's really nice to see you and to spend time with you. And I'm really glad to be in community with you and have been glad for a long time. So thank you.
I'll follow up with an email. All right, this is Tavia Gilbert of Juniper Street Photography. And if you do a lot of audiobooks, you probably already met her. All
That's
right,
right.
I will talk with you
Thank
later,
you.
Tavia. Thank
So
you.
good to see you.